From Kern Government Television, welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting, originating from the County Administrative Center located at 1115 Truxtun Avenue, Bakersfield, California. Kern County's vision is to create and maintain a customer-centered county government designed to garner the confidence, support, and trust of the people we serve. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Good morning and welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors. Today is Tuesday, May 14th. Board to reconvene. The first item is roll call.
Supervisor Gleason.
Here.
Supervisor Scrivener.
Here.
Supervisor Maggard.
Here.
Supervisor Couch.
Here.
Supervisor Perez.
Here.
Okay, before we get started, I want to announce that we do have an interpreter available today for anyone in the audience requiring translation of today's proceedings from English into Spanish. Mr. Fernando Lopez. Fernando, come on down for a second if you would. Thank you. Can you let the folks know how this will work and if they need some of the equipment, what they need to do?
Para las personas que no hablan inglés, solamente español, atrás en la mesa en la esquina hay unos dispositivos para que puedan escuchar lo que se está pasando en la reunión. Gracias.
Thank you very much. The next item is the salute to the flag, and it's going to be led this morning by Supervisor Scrivener. And please remain standing at the conclusion of that for a moment of prayer, silence, or meditation, whichever you prefer.
Please join me in the pledge. Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next item is the consent agenda. Let me tell you, there are agendas in the back of the room, by the way, if you'd like to follow along. All the items listed with a C or a CA above the item number are considered or what's considered to be the consent agenda, and those are considered to be routine and non-controversial by county staff. We can act on those all in one motion. This is the time, after I tell you which items those are, for you to let us know if you'd like to have any separate consideration for any of those items or make a comment about any of those items. So the consent agenda starts on page 2. It consists of items 1 through 6. On page 3, it's all the items 10 through 16. Page 4, it's items 17 and then 19 through 23. Page 5, it's all the items 24 through 31. Page 6, items 32 through 36. Is there anyone here that would like to pull any of those items for separate consideration? That will take a board member to do that, actually, or if you'd just like to make a comment on any of the consent agenda items. Yeah, I need you to come down to the microphone, sir, please. If there are others that would like to make a comment about anything on the consent agenda, can we get you to come down to the front row or close to it so we can get you to the microphone quickly? Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Abraham Labad, and we'd like to discuss everything except the items that are on page 1. Everything else we would like to pull individually and comment on.
So you're requesting that all the items be pulled?
Yes.
That takes a motion or a request by the member of the board. So you've made that request. I don't see any lights on from any members of the board to do that. Is there any comment that you would like to make?
Yes, I have people here that like to make a comment on each and every one of them.
Please proceed.
Okay. Come on, I apologize. Did you want to pull a item first so that we can discuss it?
No,
or
sir,
you
we're
just
not.
want a general?
I didn't have a request by any members of the board to pull any of the items for separate consideration. So if you have a comment about any of the items or all of the items, now's the time for you to make that comment.
We do. And I'll have people come in.
Please proceed.
Make the comment.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Robert Hayes. I'm here about the marijuana shops wanting to close or control.
Robert, if you want to speak to a specific item that is not on our agenda today, and none of that is, we'll have a moment, or there's a time on our agenda to do that, and it's under public presentations, item 7. And we're going to get there in a moment, but right now we're dealing with the consent agenda, which is all, I'm sorry.
I'm not familiar with all that.
I understand, I'm trying to explain. We're working right now, do you have an agenda?
It's about the shops, the closure or controlling limited amount.
I understand that, but that's not on our agenda today, so the time to speak to the board about items that are not on the agenda will be in just a few minutes.
I was asked to come, I'm sorry.
I understand.
With all due respect, everything that's on the agenda is tax dollar, and he wants to speak about the taxation aspect of marijuana.
Hang on, Mr. Labad. Let me ask my counsel if that nexus is adequate to, for this purpose.
I don't believe that it is. I think that the speakers right now are limited to speaking about items on this morning's agenda.
agenda.
The public comment period would be for other items.
Mr. Hayes, I think you're in a difficult position, so I want to try to help you out. You were asked to come and speak today. You just said that, right?
Yes.
There is a time for you to speak. It will be in just a few minutes. This is not the portion of the meeting for you to speak about the issue that you want to talk about. It will be in just a moment.
Gotcha, I'll take it.
I apologize. If you're going to vote on blanket items and one,
I'm sorry, hang on 1 second. I'm sorry, hang on 1 second. Mr. Hayes, could I ask Mr. Labad to come to the microphone and identify himself if he's going to make a statement, not just stand in the aisle and speak? Go ahead.
while you were going through the list of items that you want to rush the vote on, there were people walking in. So with all due respect, I don't think you should be rushing the vote.
We're
and
not-
You should give us an opportunity. Yes, sir?
We're not rushing to vote. I'm simply telling Mr. Hayes, who wants to speak about the dispensaries or cannabis, right? Yes. Okay, this is not the moment in the agenda to speak, and I think you know that. If there are others here that have a wish to speak about a particular item on the consent agenda, this is the moment, such as Mr. Fox. He usually comes down to speak.
Well, we would like to speak on resolution number 1. That's on the agenda.
I think you said you wanted to talk about every item on the consent agenda except what was on page 2.
No,
And that includes item number 1.
I did say that, but however, since at this point you want me to specify items that you want me to speak about, I will speak about number 1.
So you want to talk about something you didn't want to talk about before. That's fine, go right ahead.
Yeah, we'd like to talk about it. We think that any resolution adopted by this chambers is tax-driven, paid by taxes, and we believe everything is germane to our argument that we have the right to demand that our government do something a certain way because they're spending our tax dollars. I think that's our right.
Well, you
And
wanted
if
to talk about
if
item
think that-
1. That's a
one second,
resolution
please. 1
honoring
second, please.
Carlos Rivera.
Yes, we don't want to honor anybody at this point because at this point everybody in this county has been used as a tool, just like the police and sheriff
Okay.
department have been used as a tool, just like planning department has been used as a tool. So so if you're going to honor people who we believe are your agents and tools to do an injustice and criminal activity, then yeah, we're going to object.
So, for the record, you're opposed to the resolutions honoring the employees with 33 years of service, 25 years of service, 28 years of service, and 31 years of dedicated service to the county.
Yeah, because
Thank you.
they're your tools. They're
Thank-
acting as your tools.
Thank
Absolutely,
you.
absolutely, we're going to object. We're
Thank
going to
you.
object. We're going to talk about it because we
Your
believe
objection
that,
is,
we
your
believe-
sir,
we
your
believe
objection's
that-
noted. Your objection's noted.
Okay, so.
Do you have any other comments?
Yes, we'd like to talk about them. We believe that these people are your tools. You're using them. You're using every department head, and now you want to honor the people that you're using to commit crimes, take bribes, extort people, and you want to honor these people, and you want us to shut up about it? That's not going to happen.
No, I
We're
don't
not
want
gonna
you-
shut
I did-
up
I
while
did
you
not
honor
ask-
the
I did not
people
ask you to shut up
that you
about it.
use to extort us. We're not gonna shut up while you honor the people that take bribes from us. We're not going to honor those people. And yes, we're going to talk about it because that's what we're going to pull each and every one of them. If you're going to vote on it, we have the right to comment. We want to comment on number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. to
Did you-
start off with.
Are you suggesting that those 4 people took bribes?
No, I'm not suggesting
Oh.
those people took bribes. What I'm suggesting is there's enough people in this county that work for you as tools that take bribes, and at this point, we're not sure these people deserve to be recognized.
Your objection to that is noted, again.
Well, it's not an objection. We want to talk about it. We have people commenting
Well, then
specifically.
let them
that
say
you
something.
guys- Well, if you would let them without interrupting and say it's not germane, then they would.
Mr. Hayes got up to speak about a particular subject not on the agenda. So if you,
Well, if
you
you
would,
would let him-
who here would like to speak about anything on the consent agenda? Mr. Fox. Let's let Mr. Fox go. He wants to talk about the consent agenda.
Am I done? We again want to talk about number 1.
You
Number
talk-
2, number 3, and number 4.
You objected to those, and I noted your objection 2 times.
No, you're putting words into my mouth. I don't object. I object the fact that you're not letting us discuss it. I'm objecting to the fact that you're not letting us make a public comment on it, and you want to take a vote on that. With all due respect, until we make our public comments, you can't vote on that. And it's that simple. We want to talk about 1
do
through
you-
4.
do you
because
have a
they are your
comment?
tools. Yes, we do have comments. We
What
have
is it?
people that you're using these people as tools, and you're awarding them,
Okay.
while these people on your behalf are taking bribes.
Can I ask, these 4 people you're,
No, I'm talking about the people that you send with Zach Scribner.
well, those people are not, don't have anything to do, whoever you're talking about doesn't have anything to do with these 4 items. So it's not, we're not talking about the consent agenda now, which is,
But, that's your opinion, with all due respect. We believe that this is a systematic effort, a systematic conduct, and they're part of the system. It's that simple.
so these 4 people you've accused of taking bribes.
No, absolutely not. I keep telling you I don't.
Oh.
What I'm saying is there's a systematic problem, and you guys keep awarding people, okay, so that they could do your bidding. And we have a problem with that, and for that reason, we believe that anytime you're going to award people, we also want to make a public comment as to what some of these people, not these people particularly, but some of the people that you use as tools with Zach Scribner to go in on those raids. We have video on YouTube, also sold pot, has felony charges, right?
Mr. Lavad,
I saw you blink,
Are-
so
are-
I'll take that as yes.
do you have any comments on the consent agenda?
Yes, we would like to discuss
Well, let's do
Number
that. Okay, I thought you did that.
number 2, number 3. No, we did not. Again, I have people that want to discuss it
Well, why don't we let them-
on the part that whenever you guys are awarding these people, recognizing these people, what you're doing basically is you're paying or you're encouraging the systematic fraud that you're committing. And I'm not saying these guys are your tools. I don't know, after discovery they may be, but at this point, we have the right to discuss it. We don't have to show you proof, sir. We only
I'm
have
not
to
asking-
discuss it.
I'm not asking for
Well,
it.
then let us discuss it then.
Who here would like to speak about any of the items on the consent agenda as Mr. Labat is talking? I see one. He's waiting. That's Mr. Fox. Mr. Fox, I'm going to recognize you because you'd like to talk about an item on the consent agenda. Thank you.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, and Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dennis Fox. I'd like to talk about the item 27, about buying more fire apparatuses. One of the scariest things that have been predicted for our area, and we're overdue for, is the big one. And when it happens, been told the water agency came up with, and the state OES says, we'll be without water for a good 2 weeks. And I was just, before I forget to tell you about this, is that if we were to take an old engine, not turn it in, and to keep it as to draft water from the canals and stuff, and have a trailer with a filter on it, we would be prepared. Now, I'm not suggesting you come up, I'm suggesting that the OES come up with the funding we would supply a somewhat elderly patrol rig from the fire department, and they would supply the rest. And that's about the main thing I would like to suggest of it. Came up with this once. We were down looking for a 4x4 in LA, and I said, you know, that would be good. We were at an auction, and my wife was about to break my arm. The guy at the auction says, it's up to $8,000 for the engine, for an old fire engine. I almost bought it by doing that. Not too swift on my part, but it was something I would like, made me remember. That is something that would be beneficial to the county. And I think every county should have access to something on that order because we are earthquake prone here. And just to have a system to supply water to people who could line up and get some in the county would be a definite asset for it. It's just something to think ahead on, not do it, I don't say do it immediately, but think about it.
Thank you.
I thank you. Thanks a lot.
You bet. Have a nice day. Anyone else want to make a comment on the consent agenda, about any item on the consent agenda? Yes, sir.
Say number, tell them you want to speak about number one because you don't want to honor somebody who's part of the system. Simple.
I was just wondering, is this the correct time to speak on the medical marijuana issue?
No.
Okay.
Do you have an agenda, sir? In the back of the room, there are agendas, and public presentations is the moment to speak on that, and that's item 7.
I apologize for getting here late, and I'm a bit confused because of what's been going on.
I don't blame you.
With all due respect, I would like to speak at the appropriate time, so tell me if I'm out of line right now.
You're not that late because we have basically concluded the flag salute. That's where we are.
Well, here's to the flag.
We're on the consent agenda, and we're asking if there are people who would like to make a comment about any item on the consent agenda or ask for separate consideration about any item on the consent agenda. That's where we are.
Okay, so we're not at the public comments yet.
We're not at public comments, and we're certainly not to the Truth Act forum.
I will be right back.
We will be here. Anyone else like to make a comment? I don't know if she's getting up to come down for comment or if she's... Apparently not. Okay. Thank you. So I'll return to the board for...
Motion on consent.
Second.
We have a motion on the consent calendar. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. Now, that takes us back to page 2, item 7, public presentations. If you're here to speak about an item that is not on the consent agenda, not on the agenda, but is under the jurisdiction of the board, now's the time for you to speak. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Couch, members of the board. My name is Monica Weinberg, M-O-N-I-C-A-W-E-I-N-B-E-R-G. I'm here to represent the Kern County Department of Agriculture and Measurement Standards. We came here this morning to ask for your direction and involvement in moving forward with salary and equity adjustments for our department. Kern County is the highest ag-producing county in California, and California is the highest ag-producing state in the country. If Kern were ranked as a state, we are the 20th highest producing state in the country. Ag and oil are a major part of our economy in Kern, and my department is responsible for making all the agriculture run smoothly, as well as protecting the pesticide handlers, the field workers, the public, and the environment. Our biologists are required to have a bachelor's degree plus 8 different state and USDA licenses. We are paid 20% less than our counterparts across the state while doing significantly more for the industry compared to the other counties. Our department is almost entirely self-funded, and we can easily correct our salary and equity within our own budget with 0 impact on the general fund. Human Resources has already completed a formal inequity study for us and confirmed our numbers, and that was done in August and September. The CAO analyst reviewed the inequity study and our funding, and then approved our internal inequity adjustment, which showed 0 impact on the general fund. When we requested Human Resources permission to move forward, we were turned down without any explanation. So after tireless negotiations and despite proof that our department can support raises with no general fund impact, HR has recommended not moving forward. Chairman Couch and members of the board, you're considering consent agenda item number 28 this afternoon for the second inequity raise for another department in the amount of time we've been pursuing ours that also has no general fund impact. We are returning this afternoon to request that the board pull item number 28 off the consent agenda for consideration. And at least 3 other departments, such as Human Services, Environmental Health, and Clinical Psychologists, have been approved for inequity raises, also without general fund impact during this time, and we meet all of the same criteria. We have the money. It has to be spent. Please allow us to invest in our people rather than capital improvements. In the last 5.5 years, our department, which has 37 biologists, has lost 30 of those biologists. We've had to replace 30 biologists because of this. We simply are asking you for your permission to pay our people.
Ms. Weinberg.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wrapped up, not on time, but just after I was going to ask you to wrap up. Did I hear you right that you want separate consideration for item 28 on the PM agenda?
Correct.
So, and you're going to come back for that?
Correct.
Okay. Let me ask a question
Yes.
of County Council. Can the board take that action now, or do we need to wait till the afternoon agenda and they need to request it again? How would you like to do that?
Chairman Couches, that is on your afternoon's agenda. That's what it's been, when it's been noticed for your consideration.
So does she need to make another request this afternoon?
Yes.
Okay. Can you do that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're trying to observe a 2-minute time limit so we can get through as many speakers as possible. Good morning.
Good morning, Supervisor Couch and members of the board. I read an extensive, my name is Mary Helen Barrow. I live at 201 Jefferson Street in Supervisor Magritt's district. I read an article this morning, it was quite extensive, about the amount of water that we can expect because of the melting and the extensive snows. And I don't know whether the board has addressed this issue and possible ways of capturing that water for future use. And if you haven't already begun to consider something, would you please do so? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Mr. Hayes.
Is it time?
It's time. Told you.
Again, my name is Robert Hayes. About the marijuana laws and the stores or pharmacies where we can get the product. Little history. I'm a 31-year veteran on the LA Fire Department, retired 6 years ago. Started off my career with a 35-pound bag. Remember the life net? The life net we would catch people into from 4 floors up? Yes. Right? Remember those? The people would go maybe to the left, to the right. We're trying to, figure out, trying to catch them. Then the captain, fake left through right. We can't react. The bag landed on my head. First time in my life I ever saw canaries as I was going down. Okay, I was a big, strong guy at the time, and the injury wasn't going to affect me right then. Down the road, my neck is full of arthritis. My lower back, through getting up every night with the jaws of life, opening up the car to save many people's lives. I'm ready for back surgery. I'm getting an epidural in my neck. I hope it helps. The big drug to help you, Norco and Soma. Well, they're taking Soma off the market, and Norco is getting hard to find. And you know what they gave me with my Norco? Forced me to get a thing of Narcan. Narcan is to bring back a person from overdosing on heroin. If you look at Norco, it is heroin. It is addicting, and when you are really hurt, you end up in the hospital because you're constipated beyond belief. Now, marijuana, it seems to relieve the pain. It seems to help immensely. In my town, we have a lot of liquor stores and we have a lot of drug stores. Gee, I live in Lancaster. But they're having a hard time with the drug. Now, the history of marijuana, how many people have overdosed on it? Not many from what I hear. They never seem to have, but heroin, overdose, meth is a real bad thing. The drug is not the drug they thought in the 60s, the next step to heroin. Today, they are trying to push some type of heroin on you. I would like to be able to not find out who is dealing marijuana on the back, whatever. I'd like to be able to go get it.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Could I ask you to bring your comment to a close? We've gone 2 minutes and 40 seconds now.
I didn't know I was that long.
That's okay. Well, I don't know where the timer is for, oh, it's up here.
I'm very sorry.
That's okay.
I hope I made my point.
You did.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here today.
My name is Marcus Phoenix. I'm here to talk about the medical marijuana dispensaries. The business is very, it's a financial gain all the way around. Right now, Kern County does need it, as everyone in here knows. I don't see why you guys wouldn't want to jump on top of this. Like he said, there's people that's getting addicted to pills and alcohol, and it's way better for them to just get medical marijuana and just call it a day. But also, it's going to stop a lot of people from doing a lot of bad stuff. Marijuana is not a bad drug, like he said. It's a happy drug. People are happy. They're not going to want to go out and rob a store or nothing like that. But other than that, I just want to say, I don't know, you guys need to get on board. I really don't know what to tell you. You're wasting time.
Thank you, Mr. Phoenix. We'll be next. By the way, I want to compliment you and thank you for lining up and getting to the microphone quickly. I appreciate that.
Good morning, everybody. Cap Philly. No, I want to be in silence.
Mr. Hayes, I think she wants to utilize her 2 minutes as a public presentation as silence, in silence. Thank you. We'll be next.
Good morning. My name's Andrew Burnett. I want to speak on the medical marijuana issue.
Yes, sir.
So here we are again, standing in front of you, pleading for our clemency on this issue. We've notified you relentless times about the benefits of medical marijuana and that We are not the users of marijuana. We are the people that vote you all into the political positions that you are in. Also, the disrespect that you listen to us, not in our flight. We are medical patients who are in dire need of this, which is what you are denying us. Your ignorance is astounding. The taxes you incur from medical marijuana could alleviate many of the county programs, which have been canceled or left in limbo due to deficient funds. Logic and reasoning would naturally lead to a more compatible and positive conclusion, but there is none. Logic or reasoning found here. So I'd like to say to you, Board of Supervisors, good luck with your political aspirations in your next election. We happen to be the tax-paying citizens, and your chosen ignorance seems to be forgotten. And I don't know, basically, if you take away the shops, everyone's gonna have to get their stuff off the streets, causes more crime. I don't know, just leaving the shops there would just cause less problems than taking them away.
Thank you, Mr. Burnett. Good morning.
Hello, good morning. Sorry, I have a lot of anxiety, kind of nervous, but I'm here talking regarding the dispensaries. Rachel, thank you. And I just feel honestly like it will take a lot of jobs away. A lot of my friends work at weed shops, and they have children that they need to provide for. And closing them all down, you'll lose about probably like 200 people's jobs, just wasted. And then that's definitely embarrassing. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I have anxiety. See, I need marijuana too, because my anxiety is out of control. But I just feel like, all the jobs will be lost, and people will be like on their own and trying to look for a job right now is kind of hard, especially since tax season just passed. So, because I'm looking for another job, but it's been really challenging. So I just feel like we shouldn't close them down. Also for medical reasons too, it's not even a bad thing. I mean, God gave us herbs, right? So, yeah, I think.
Thank you, Rachel. Who'll be next?
Scott Slowick, S-L-O-W-I-K. What do we got to do to get to you guys? Like, do we get people's votes for it, or, like, what would it take for us to actually get through to you guys? It's going to help out everybody, including you guys yourself and your agendas. I mean, I only see one shop here, really, out of all the shops in Roseman. One couldn't stay open to give people the medical they need? Are you closing them all down? I've already missed 2 days of work because of this. Like, I don't know, how much more is it going to take? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Maria Cardenas, and I'm reading on behalf of Mary R. It says, my name is Mary. I am a 65-year-old woman with rheumatoid arthritis in both my hands and right shoulder. Having a marijuana dispensary in my neighborhood is a wonderful thing. Taking prescribed medication has an adverse effect on me. I'm a small frame person who weighs 83 pounds. Taking painkillers make me sick because my medication is too strong. Then there are the side effects of cardiovascular problems, liver and kidney disease, and addiction. I don't want to take a medication that I don't need every day. I want an as-needed pain relief. Some days I need more than others, and there are the days when I don't need any. The THC in marijuana works best for me as a therapeutic relief. I can adjust the amount of marijuana that I need according to my level of pain without all the side effects of prescribed medication. Without the marijuana dispensaries, I will be forced to break the law with illegal activities of buying marijuana from a street dealer. Also, there are dangers of dealing with people you don't know who are involved in illegal activities. I'm a small frame person, and I'm afraid of what can happen to me in a situation such as that. Please make it legal for persons as me to be able to get the medical marijuana that we need. Thank you, Mary R.
Thank you.
And I have her letter to give to the board.
Does the letter have Mary R.'s address?
Or any
Is
contact?
she in District 1 is what I want to know.
I'm not sure. It doesn't
Thank you.
have her address. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Yes.
Public presentations?
Yes. Not last public meeting, but the prior public meeting, which is more than 11 days, there was a group of people here that represented another dispensary, and they asked that the medical marijuana issue be placed on the agenda so that we could discuss it. That was more than 11 days ago. And at this point, since I don't think it's on the agenda, I didn't see it as I glanced through it. I was hoping that at some point we could get that on the agenda. And if there's something else that you guys want me to do, get that on the agenda. I'd like to have it on the agenda as soon as possible, please. I like taking the rest of my time in silence. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Labad.
Have a good day.
Any other public presentations? Yes, morning, sir.
Good morning. Al Castaneda. I was here yesterday for another reason on the agenda, but since everybody's talking about the issue of marijuana, growing marijuana, I want to say first that I'm by profession, I'm a biomedical engineer, a formerly State University scientist, and I want to say that I'm 100% for the benefits of the medicinal benefits of marijuana, but I'm 100% in opposition to the unregulated allowance of criminal and underground shops growing marijuana. Personally, even I have problems right now with about 3 or 4 clandestine operations where there's basically like a collection of rats. There are all the criminals that are engaging in growing marijuana. So I advocate for the 100% regulation of the process of growing and production of marijuana for medicinal purposes only, not for recreational. They cause accidents, people are driving around high on drugs, and I'm in total opposition against that. But I advocate for the medicinal production and control of marijuana. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Castaneda. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Dale Lamison, L-A-M-A-S-O-N. I'm here regarding staffing changes listed in Interim Chief Witt's letter, April 8th, 2019. Station 11 covers a challenging area that has steep upward slopes towards Bear Mountain along both Route 58 and 223. The vehicular and train traffic along these routes is the source of almost all fires in Station 11's coverage area. This traffic has dramatically increased, bringing with increased fire risk. Other challenges to response along Route 58 is the concrete barrier separating the east and west traffic that causes responding fire vehicles to drive to the next turnaround and then drive back to be on scene, causing an even greater response if response comes from an out of the area. Will the staffing changes listed in Interim Chief's letter allow the staffing during the 6-month fire season, and I lost my place here, meeting the state-funded fire protection allocation as shown in the CAL FIRE Gray Book of 2 staffed engines with no mention of any state-funded allocation for cross-staffing of air operations. The critical initial response is what prevents a small fire from becoming a big fire. It takes all of the past efforts to prevent a catastrophic fire in this challenging area. Hazard fuel reduction, fire breaks, ground resources, and air resources. That's why there has been success in preventing a severe fire in the area. Otherwise, a fire along Route 58 or 223 will have an increased chance to grow past fire breaks, progress towards steeper slopes, then growing dramatically upslope till it reaches Bear Mountain and it's a dead tree forest, which would put Bear Valley Springs at great risk. This is not about just a small community. It's about stopping a fire from going up a mountain. What about cross-staffing during off-fire season? It's with little impact at all, maybe cap the savings, but that's a possibility. And as I say, supervisors, take a helicopter ride, go see for yourself firsthand. I'm sure the pilots can show the risks of these challenging areas. My time's up, but I got to add congratulations to these members with the years of service back here for surviving all those years.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Good afternoon, or good morning. My name's Steve Duce, D-U-C-E. I'm here to talk about two things. The Kern County Pension Fund that's requiring 11% of the county's GDP to fund. This is the 5th worst managed pension fund in the state. I'd like to point out one thing. You've been fighting cannabis since 2006. So if we do a basic math, you've basically lost the ability to tax about $1 billion worth of cannabis. I've spoken with over 40 shops to get this information. On an average of $4,000 a day in sales, 365 days a year, is $58 million. In 10 years, that's $580 million. You complain about money. You have people asking you to hire more people, give them a raise, while you sit here and spend money to fight this. Mr. Scribner, you said in your campaign that your main focus was to get the pension fund healthy. What have you done? I've never heard you say one thing about it except lose the ability to tax a revenue that you guys already have. This issue was decided in 2006. It was again decided in 2009. And your systematic passing of your ordinances and whatever it takes for you to classify these people as nuisances is only going to last for a very short time. I think it would be best if we spent our money promoting this bossy measure that's coming up so that instead of only being able to have our dispensaries, we'll also be able to grow 10,000 square feet of cannabis, manufacture, distribute. We basically have a mecca here. So I encourage you to maintain your position. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duce. Who'll be next? I don't see any other speakers for public presentations, so we'll move on to item 8. Sorry. If you would like, how many would like to speak during public presentations? Ma'am, you were already down here, and we observed 2 minutes of silence on your behalf. I cannot hear you.
I just wanted to say that marijuana is not a drug. Drugs are manufactured. Marijuana is a herb. Comes from a seed. It's grown from the ground.
Thank you, ma'am.
It's earthly.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're very welcome.
I don't see any other folks for public presentations. So we'll move on to item 8, which is board member announcements and reports. Seeing none of those, we'll move on to...
Screen.
I'm sorry. Sorry, Supervisor Maggard.
Thank you. I'd like to have Jeff Hill come up and give us a brief report on lightning in a bottle. Morning, Mr. Hill. Thank you for coming forward.
Thank you, Supervisor Maggard. Through the chair, just a brief report on the very successful event that we had out at Buena Vista over the past few days. I visited the site Thursday, Friday, and Monday. I was there Friday night for quite a while and kept in contact with command staff at the Incident Command Center. By way of just a statistic about it, we expected up to 25,000, had approved 25,000. We got 18,000 participants, both staff, event help, as well as the attendees. So it was a good project for the proponent, for the Do Lab. We're very pleased how the event went. One of the greatest success stories was the collaboration between county departments. It was truly tremendous. Every department was out there and working together and sharing information as necessary. That is across the board through the Incident Command Center. The event itself was successful, and the park's grounds appeared to be very well taken care of. Do Lab's expectation was that they would leave it better than they got there, and we believe that that is happening and will happen. For a festival of this size and our first foray into this type of event, I would say it was an overwhelmingly positive experience and a success. A lot of work happened in a very short period of time. Tremendous effort by all partners. Again, sheriff's staff, fire, public health, probation, search and rescue, Cal OES was out there. Our planning department was integral. General services, parks, and maintenance staff, our rangers were involved. Do Lab's team of thousands, literally. And then the business partners. So all of our expected partners came together, both government, non-government, and had a tremendous event. We will be coming back to you guys, by the way, with the after-action report, probably led by the Sheriff's Department. They had obstacles. There were weather issues. They overcame those, both from a attendance perspective, programming perspective, and site perspective. So they mitigated those impacts. I would like to just kind of close with a quote from Didi from the Do Lab. I asked him for what he would like to say, and he'll come back before your board as well. That they're incredibly pleased with the results of the months of planning with all the county agencies. It was an ambitious timeline, and it really was a very ambitious timeline. But we came together, over-prepared, and really had a successful first-year event. Most importantly, they've established a foundation and positive working relationship with an eye to the future, and I believe that they'll be approaching us for future events. So a great event. I know quite a few people who attended in an official capacity, as well as just out there to check out the scene. It was a great event, well attended, well thought of. All the social media really is in support of it. Great press today in the Californian. So 4 pages, 1, 2, 3, and 4 pages were dedicated to pictures and the story. So again, thanks for the opportunity, Supervisor Maggart, to say a few words. It was a great event, and I look forward to building on it in the future.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate your comments, and I'm grateful for the success that we've had. Thank you to your department. Thank you to the Sheriff's Department. Thank you to the Fire Department, to probation, to public health, to all the others that were involved. Our hats are off to you guys to making it a good initial event. So thank you very much.
Yeah, one final sort of comment. Everybody was involved in an interactive and tremendously positive way. But I would like to shout out to Commander Morrison. He really led the incident command team from the Sheriff's Department, was an advocate throughout, as well as Derek Tysinger with the Fire Department.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Scribner.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hill. I'm pleased to hear that we're going to have an after-action report. This event took place in District 2, and so I felt it was important for me to go out on Sunday for a couple of hours just to get a look at how the event was being conducted. And I echo your remarks. It seemed like the event was safe. The traffic flow coming in and out was well done. It seemed extremely well organized. The attendees seemed like they were having a good time, but polite. No one was out of control. The event promoter, Dee Fleming, said the same thing to me. He said, he said how happy he was, first of all, with how he was treated in Kern County and how county staff was so great to work with, and that they do want to come back, and that they and all of their attendees really, really love the venue. It's an amazing asset that we have out there at Buena Vista. And so this was, I think, an opportunity for Kern County to showcase one of our centerpieces that we can offer for folks that would be interested in doing this kind of an event. So thank you for all of your hard work, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Thank you. With that, I think that concludes item 6. No more board member announcements or reports. We'll move, item 8. I don't have my glasses today. Item 9 is under Aging and Adult Services. It's a request to accept from Pacific Gas and Electric a grant in the amount of $30,000 for the Cooling Center program. Good morning, Mr. Murillo.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Lito Morello, your Director of Aging and Adult Services. I'm joined here today by Jeff Hill from General Services and representatives from PG&E, Pat Mullen, Katie Allen, Kristen Dowd, and Jim Hendricks. Our cooling centers have been operational since 2007, and since that time, our real main supporter have been PG&E, so we're really grateful for that. Through their generosity, PG&E has provided us with a $30,000 grant each year, which makes these cooling centers possible. Over the last 12 years, our cooling centers have really evolved. All in total now, we have about 15 senior centers, with our new site being Mojave. Similar to the last couple of years, we'll begin operating our cooling center starting tomorrow, and it'll run through September 22nd. This grant allows us to pay for not only the staff at General Services to man the cooling centers, but the water, the snacks, the games that are available for the individuals to really enjoy. It also pays for transportations to the cooling center sites through our partnership with Kern Transit and Get a Lift. The operation of the cooling center is truly a collaborative effort involving multiple partners and volunteers. I'm proud to say that Kern County is a unique model in the state. The collaboration we have with the cities, the counties, the different departments and organizations and the volunteers have other counties and cities calling us to figure out how to run their cooling center in their respective cities. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank General Services and their staff, particularly Leslie Wallace, for collaborating with us on this project. And from my department, Michelle Timmerman, who serves as our liaison and coordinator between PG&E. Again, I'd like to thank PG&E for their continued support. And now I'll turn it over to Pat Mullen, who has a few things to say.
Thank you, Leo. Thank you, Chairman Couch and Supervisors Gleason and Maggard, Scribner, and Perez. We appreciate the opportunity to be here today with this positive news. As Lito mentioned, my name is Pat Mullen. I'm the Kern Division Director for PG&E, and I'm here today with my colleagues, Kristen Dowd in our Government Relations Group, Katie Allen, who handles our communications, and our Division Operations Specialist, Jim Hendricks. We're here today on behalf of the 600 employees and colleagues that we have here in Kern County to once again present this support to the county and to Aging and Adult Services. We appreciate the opportunity that we've continued to have to serve the residents of Kern County and to partner with the county and partner with the department in providing some funding to help continue to support these cooling centers. It helps provide a cooling, air-conditioned location for a lot of seniors and adults who don't have the ability to sometimes escape the high temperatures that we have here in the Central Valley. So we're just pleased to again partner with you, to tell you thank you for you and your staff's ongoing partnership, and again to present this check for $30,000 to the county to help support those cooling centers. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Do we have anybody here that can take a picture?
Turn this way.
Of the check, yeah. Thank you so much, sorry. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
And Supervisors, thank you again. We appreciate the ongoing partnership and look forward to continuing to work.
I've only known you about 50 years. It's good to see you again.
I know. Take care. Thanks
Take
again.
care. Thank you for being here, guys. Supervisor Scribner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, thank you to PG&E for the ongoing partnership. These centers do provide a tremendous amount of relief in our county for folks that don't have the ability to find another location where they can escape the heat. But I do want to also thank Mr. Murillo. Lito, thank you for all you did in order to get Mojave added to our list. It's very hot in the desert, and that's a great venue that we have there at the County Veteran Center. So thank you for your effort. Appreciate it, sir. I'll make a motion on staff's recommendation.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Thank you. The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. That takes us over to item 18 under County Council. Item is to conduct a public forum in accordance with Government Code Section 7283.1D and receive a report regarding local law enforcement agencies' interaction and communication with United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement in 2018. And the requested action is to open the public forum, hear the presentation, receive and consider public comment. Ms. Rezon?
Thank you, Chairman Couch. Good morning, Chairman and members of the board. This item is being brought before your board this morning so a community forum may occur. As you know, your board held a Truth Act community forum last night as well. Specifically, the California Transparent Review of Unjust Transfers and Hold Act, also known as the Truth Act, and contained within the California Government Code, mandates that the governing body of any county in which a local law enforcement agency has provided immigration and custom enforcement, ICE, access to an individual during the last year, conduct at least one community forum during the following year. Your board is such a governing board. Government Code Section 7283.1 states the purpose of the forum is to provide information to the public about ICE's access to individuals and to receive and consider public comment. Your board's meeting today is the place and time, one of the place and times selected for the community forum to provide information about the year 2018 to the public and to receive and consider public comment. The required notice of this morning's forum has been provided. Kern County Probation Chief T.R. Miracle is present and has a brief statement. Following Chief Miracle's statement, Kern County Sheriff, represented by Chief Deputy Tyson Davis and the Sheriff, and Ian Silva are all present and have a presentation which will provide statistical information about ICE's access to individuals during 2018. There was also a request by Jordan Wells and Amber Tovar. I haven't seen Jordan here yet. Amber Tovar and Jordan Wells to make a formal presentation, and their PowerPoint has been provided. At the conclusion of the formal presentations, it would be appropriate to invite public comment. It is therefore recommended that your board conduct the forum, including receiving and considering public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Miracle, good morning.
Morning, Chairman Couch, members of the board. T.R. Miracle, Chief Probation Officer. As you know, the Probation Department operates juvenile detention facilities here in Kern County, also supervises both juveniles and adult felony offenders. Over the past year, we reviewed our records and have confirmed that in 2018, we did not provide ICE access to any individual during the last year. Therefore, it has no data to provide for the purpose of this forum. I did just want to note that yesterday, Mr. Wells brought up a matter from 2017. I did contact him this morning. We're going to follow up on that. But that would conclude my remarks. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry. Supervisor Perez, did you? Okay. Thank you, Chief. Sheriff, good morning. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. My pleasure. This is our opportunity to provide information to the public about ICE's access to individuals that are incarcerated in our jail. For the record, we have no involvement outside the jail with ICE in immigration enforcement. Chief Deputy Tyson Davis and Lieutenant Ian Silva will make the presentation.
Good morning.
Here you go. Now you're on.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Supervisors, and thank you for inviting us to speak with you today.
In an effort to maintain consistency, I will provide the same presentation that I provided at the meeting last night. I will also add a few additional comments to try and answer some questions that came up during the public forum last night from members of the public. As you're aware, Government Code 7283.1, subsection D, calls for a forum to provide information to the public about ICE's access to individuals and to receive and consider public comment, and allows the Sheriff's Office to provide related data to the board. To that end, I would like to take a few moments to provide some data and information regarding ICE access to inmates during 2018. It is important to note that I will only be discussing matters related to the Sheriff's Office operations, as the Sheriff does not have direct or have authority over the operations of federal, state, or other local law enforcement agencies. Before I get into specifics, I would like to reiterate some points that were mentioned in last year's forum regarding what the Sheriff's Office does and does not do in relation to immigration enforcement. First, the Sheriff's Office does not hold inmates past their date of release or delay their release. The Sheriff's Office does not ask individuals about their immigration status or provide ICE with access to our databases. We are not involved in the enforcement of immigration law, deportations, or immigration sweeps. That said, the Sheriff's Office does cooperate with ICE as allowed by law, including making release notifications to ICE regarding eligible inmates. As part of this process, we notify inmates when ICE has requested notification of their release and notify inmates of their rights regarding release notification and interview requests. I'll be discussing these processes and notifications in a bit more detail later in my presentation. Over the course of the last year, the Sheriff's Office has continued to review and improve our policies and procedures related to the Truth Act and Senate Bill 54. This process of review has included ongoing consultation with County Council and discussions with representatives from the ACLU. Before I discuss some of the processes related to SB 54 and the Truth Act, I'd like to briefly mention the Trust Act. This 2014 legislation prohibited agencies from holding inmates for ICE once their local charges were resolved, unless certain charges applied. At that time, the Sheriff's Office ended the practice of holding inmates for ICE past their release dates, regardless of the charges. This remains the case today. Releases are not delayed for ICE. Now I'd like to move on to talk about some of our processes that relate to the Truth Act and SB 54. First, I'll be talking about release notifications and ICE arrests at the jail, which are primarily a function of SB 54. After that, I'll discuss requests by ICE to interview inmates, which is covered under the Truth Act. In terms of notification requests, the process starts when an ICE officer fills out a request form for a specific inmate. Our staff reviews the inmate's criminal history to determine if he or she meets the criteria laid out by SB 54, which is mostly based on prior convictions. If staff determines the inmate is eligible, the file is flagged for notification upon release. If not, the form is placed in the file with a mark indicating notification is not authorized. The inmates for whom notification is authorized are notified using a form, which we have available in the various languages required by the Truth Act. The form also gives the inmate an opportunity to let us know who they wish to contact when we notify ICE, which is another requirement of the Truth Act. The inmate gets a copy of the completed form. When an inmate is due to be released and meets the criteria for ICE notification, that notification happens when the release process starts. The time it takes to process a release can vary greatly depending on what is happening in the jail and how many releases need to be processed. However, the release is not delayed. If ICE is present once the inmate is released, they can make their arrest. If not, the inmate is released normally. In 2018, ICE made notification requests for 597 of the 31,789 individuals who were booked into the Sheriff's Office jails. This represents fewer than 2% of all bookings. Of those, ICE arrested 374 from the jails. I should note that 16 of those were from requests made in 2017. Also, 16 inmates for whom notification was requested in 2018 were still in custody as of May 1st of this year. This chart provides an illustration of the data comparing 2017, shown by the blue bars, with 2018 in the red. As you can see on the left, the number of notification requests didn't change too much, falling about 4%. However, the number of arrests, shown on the right, fell significantly by about 23%. SB 54 went into effect in 2018, and this decrease was in line with our expectations. The second chart is another way to look at the same data. In 2017, on the left, about 80% of the inmates for whom notification was requested ended up being arrested from the jails. On the right, in 2018, about 60% ended up being arrested. Before we move on to discuss interviews, I'd like to provide you some basic demographic information we put together. As you can see from this slide, of the 597 individuals for whom ICE requested notification, the great majority were Hispanic and male. The average age was 36, and the median amount of time spent in our custody was about 5 days. The rules surrounding interview requests by ICE are governed by the Truth Act. When ICE wants to interview an inmate, the inmate is notified by way of a form, again translated into various languages required by the Truth Act. The form gives the inmate 3 choices: to decline to be interviewed, to agree to be interviewed with their attorney present, or to agree to be interviewed without their attorney. The inmate signs and is given a copy. If the inmate refuses to sign, that is taken as a refusal to be interviewed. Our data indicates that ICE requested to interview 81 inmates and ultimately interviewed only 12. Of those for whom interviews were requested, 81% declined the interview altogether, 15% agreed to be interviewed without their attorney, and 4% agreed but wanted their attorney present. Before I close, I'd like to make some clarifications about some items that were mentioned in the last forum last year. First, the Sheriff's Office is not involved in arrests that ICE makes in the community. Whatever activities may initiate locally are done so without our involvement. Second, ICE does not have access to Sheriff's Office databases, and we do not provide them with offices within the jail. Finally, I wanted to point out that the Sheriff's Office is not involved with the operation of the Mesa Verde Detention Facility. That facility's operation is completely separate from the operations of the sheriff's jails at Lerdo, downtown, or in the outlying communities, as is the case with numerous detention facilities in Kern County that are unaffiliated with the Sheriff's Office. At last night's meeting, there were several questions related to the Mesa Verde facility. One of the supervisors asked for clarification, and I told him that I was unaware of any contracts or any agreements that the Sheriff's Office had with Mesa Verde. I'm also unaware of any authority that the County of Kern has over that facility. There were also questions about fingerprints, why people are fingerprinted when they're brought to jail. We fingerprint everyone that is arrested and booked into the jail so that we can have positive identification. We also send those fingerprints to the Cal DOJ system, and Cal DOJ is connected to the federal database. There were questions about how ICE learns who's in our custody. I've personally spoken with a local ICE supervisor who told me they are a federal law enforcement agency and they have access to federal databases, and so they are able to see who is in our jail system. Again, the Sheriff's Office is not providing that information to them. I would like to close by mentioning that last week, the Sheriff's Office received a letter from the ACLU discussing 5 specific concerns they have regarding our policies and procedures relevant to SB 54 and the Truth Act. We are reviewing their concerns in consultation with County Council and have a scheduled meeting with the ACLU to discuss these 5 points. Of course, if after those discussions we believe there is a need to make clarifications to our policies, we will do so. As I mentioned earlier, the Sheriff's Office continues to evaluate these procedures and to ensure we are in compliance with the relevant statutes. And with that said, I would like to thank the board for inviting us to speak on this matter again. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I believe there's a presentation by Ms. Amber Tovar and Mr. Jordan Wells. Good morning.
Good morning, members and chairman of the board, to the department, and to the community members here who are here today to provide public comment. My name is Amber Tovar, and I am a removal immigration defense attorney with the United Farm Workers Foundation. Our partner organizations and community appreciate your willingness to join us today for the last session of the Truth Forum. In my presentation to you this morning, I want to be able to provide you with a little bit of background information about the current state of our immigration laws, how these impact residents of Kern County, and the requirements of the Truth and California Values Act. Today's forum will especially focus on the California Values Act, also known as SB 54. As I said, I want to begin with a very brief introduction to current immigration laws that have created a broken immigration system in the United States. The reason why I think it's important to do this is to provide some context and portray the current situation of thousands of people here in Kern County. Immigration law in the U.S. is considered only second to tax law in complexity. It is cumbersome, difficult to navigate. Those that attempt to navigate the process often fall victims of fraud at the hands of local notarios who prey on their immigrant community. In Kern County alone, there are only about a handful of immigration attorneys. As some of you may know, even in deportation proceedings where the stakes are so high for individuals, an attorney is not appointed to represent the individual in immigration court. As a result, it is common to see people represent themselves against a possible deportation, some as young as infants and toddlers. Our immigration system is governed by the Immigration and Nationality Act, and the number of people who can be granted permanent stay in this country is limited by statute. The most common form or type of immigration benefit that is available to individuals is that of a family-based immigration system. Family members are able to submit an application to immigration office to prove the family relationship as an immediate relative of a U.S. citizen. A U.S. citizen, immediate relative of a U.S. citizen is defined as spouses, parents, or minor children of U.S. citizens, or be involved in a lengthy process called the family preference system. Let me give you an example. For people that enter the country without documentation, it means that even though they may qualify for a visa because they have a family member that can apply on their behalf, immigration laws currently force them to leave the country first to then be eligible for a green card. Once the person leaves, the law also says that you are punished for 10 years, and in those 10 years, you cannot return to the country because you were previously in the U.S. without proper documentation. There are some narrow exceptions, but this is the reality of many, many people in the U.S. A closer look at the family preference system that is available for individuals who do not fit the criteria of an immediate relative of a U.S. citizen. What you see here is a chart organized by that of family preferences. The first family preference is for unmarried adult children of U.S. citizens. As you can see, if the person is from Mexico, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, which is the adjudicating office of these applications, is currently processing applications that were submitted on or before August 8, 1997. That means that family members have waited 22 years, perhaps over 22 years, for a visa to become available to them. And still, that does not guarantee that the person will be ultimately granted a green card. When people unfamiliar with our broken immigration laws say that people immigrating to this country should get in line, that line does not exist for most people. Because if you do not have a qualifying relative, there is no way for you to submit an application for an immigration benefit. And for those that do, that line is 22 years long. Unfortunately, being in the U.S. today without documentation means that many people are left in vulnerable places where every day they fear a possible deportation. The majority of people that have been deported in recent times were people who had resided in the country for over a decade. What does that mean? That means that many of them had established roots in this country, in this county. They were mothers and fathers, contributing members of society that are suddenly uprooted and often forced to leave a family behind. In the US, it is estimated that more than 8 million citizens live with at least one family member, often a parent, who is undocumented. About 6 million US citizen children live with a parent or family member who is undocumented. The deportation machine that is breaking families in the US and in our county has serious consequences that affect children in our communities. And those effects are felt in other sectors of our society, such as schools, health departments, the foster care system, and the list goes on. We must remember the vital role that our immigrant community plays in our country and in our local community. In California alone, immigrant-led households in the state paid roughly $56.5 billion in federal and $26.4 billion in state and local taxes in 2014. Undocumented immigrants in California paid an estimated $3.2 billion in state and local taxes in 2014. In Kern County, foreign-born individuals contributed about 19% of all labor income, about 10% of the county's GDP annually. These numbers cannot be ignored. The contribution of our immigrant community to this county cannot be ignored, despite attempts to isolate and diminish their value. When people ask, is ICE and deportations something to worry about in Kern County? I think these numbers speak for themselves. ICE data from October 2017 through May 2018 show that ICE local enforcement is prevalent and rampant in our community. In fact, Kern County achieved national attention and notoriety through these numbers. There are two sets of charts that you see here. On the left, you have Kern County ranking number 17 in the nation in ICE enforcement in Kern County. This is through non-community arrest, including custodial arrest. On the right, you have ICE arrest in our community, and again, Kern County made top 25 in the nation. So over 3,200 counties that exist in the country, Kern County achieved the number 25 spot. As the department briefly mentioned, there are 3 California statutes that are at play. The Trust Act, which became effective in 2014 and was later amended by the California Values Act, prohibited law enforcement from detaining individuals in response to ICE hold requests in most circumstances. The Truth Act became effective in 2017 and provides know your rights information to individuals. It ensures fair notice and increases transparency. The California Values Act became effective in 2018 and amended the Trust Act. It limited the role of California law enforcement agencies in immigration enforcement. The Trust Act prohibited specifically local jailers from cooperating with requests from ICE to hold or detain a non-citizen beyond the time that the person would otherwise have been released from custody to allow ICE to apprehend that person. This applied to all non-citizens unless the person came within an exception. If an exception applied, the jailer had discretion to honor or not that request by ICE. It provided no protection, unfortunately, against ICE notification requests for release date or transfers. The Truth Act, again, that became effective in 2017, provided know your rights information to individuals. Prior to an interview between ICE and an individual in local or state custody, the law enforcement agency is required to provide the individual with written consent form that explains the purpose of the interview, that the interview is voluntary, and that the individual has the right to have an attorney present to interview alone or decline the interview. It also sought to ensure fair notice. It requires the law enforcement agency who receives an ICE hold, transfer, or notification request to serve a copy of that request to the individual and inform the individual whether the law enforcement agency intends to comply. If the law enforcement agency decides to notify ICE of an individual's release date, the individual and their attorney must also be notified in writing. It also sought to increase transparency. It requires the local legislative body to hold a community forum annually, such as we're doing today, if the local law enforcement agency allows ICE any access to any individual. Also, any and all records related to ICE access are publicly available through the Public Records Act request. The California Values Act, as I mentioned, it's known in the community as SB 54. With some exceptions, it limited the role of California law enforcement agency in federal immigration enforcement. It amended the Trust Act and extended protections of the Truth Act to the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. In part, the law states, California law enforcement agencies shall not use agency or department monies or personnel to investigate, interrogate, detain, detect, or arrest persons for immigration enforcement purposes. So what are the key provisions of the California Values Act? We have summarized these in 10 key provisions. The first one regards immigration holds. The law enforcement agency is prohibited, with absolutely no exception, from holding an individual beyond the termination of criminal custody to allow ICE to apprehend that person. We heard yesterday from my colleague Jordan Wells that that is contrary to what's written currently in the sheriff's policy. But he will speak to that a little bit more. Regarding civil immigration arrest, law enforcement agencies are prohibited from making arrests on civil immigration warrants. Law enforcement agencies are prohibited from performing the functions of an immigration officer. They are further prohibited from inquiring into a person's immigration status, and they are prohibited from sharing personal information about an individual with immigration, except if that information is publicly available. In regards to notification, the law enforcement agency is prohibited from notifying ICE about a release date, except if the person comes within a Trust Act exception or that information is already publicly available. The law enforcement agency is prohibited from facilitating the transfer of an individual to ICE, except if the person comes again within a Trust Act exception. The law enforcement agency is then required to report those transfers and the basis of each of those transfers to the Attorney General's office. The law enforcement agency is prohibited from arresting people for unlawful reentry unless, one, reentry is detected during an unrelated law enforcement activity, and the person was previously convicted of a state or federal offense that meets the immigration definition of an aggravated felony. As I mentioned last night, aggravated felony is an immigration law term of art, and I also mentioned that I would be very impressed if the Sheriff's Department was able to determine which convictions fall under an aggravated felony in immigration law. Number 9, the Truth Act provisions have been extended to California prisons, meaning obtaining written consent before an ICE interview. The law enforcement agency, again, is prohibited from providing ICE exclusive office space in its facilities. In my closing, I want to reiterate some points. We heard stories last night during the first session that openly express fear of the practices of our department. Communities should not be forced to live in fear, regardless of where they were born. Now, I know this county in the past, with the support of some of you members of the board, was not receptive to working a Kern County policy that would make Kern County a sanctuary county. We are now at a point where the California Values Act is a law that requires this county to be compliant and not violate our community's due process rights. Justice should not be a thing for a selected few. Justice must be available to all. Thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wells? Thank you. Morning.
Morning. Thank you, Chairman Couch. Good to see everyone back after 12 hours of rest. We're back here to discuss this. These are important matters for Kern County. And before I get into my presentation, which is essentially a discussion of our analysis of the Kern County Sheriff's Office implementation of the state sanctuary laws, I just want to mention a couple things from last night.
what was striking about last night was, and this is something that I said at the outset of my presentation last night, is the community is not as concerned with the scrupulous attention to the details of the state sanctuary laws as they are interested in the total disentanglement of the sheriff's office from immigration enforcement functions. And so while my presentation focuses on the requirements of state law, we support community members who last night and on an ongoing basis have expressed a desire to see the sheriff's office completely disentangle itself from ICE enforcement functions. The state sanctuary laws are just a floor, not a ceiling, to what the sheriff's office can do in separating itself from the immigration enforcement functions and building trust with the community. And we urge the sheriff's office to carry that desire of the community forward as much as it possibly can. I also want to mention that, our presentation and the sheriff's office presentation is focused on the custodial setting where, someone's being released either because the bail's been posted or their term of incarceration is run. But the stories that we heard last night were of people out in the community finding themselves, within very close temporal proximity of a contact with the sheriff's office, finding themselves arrested by ICE. And they are drawing the very reasonable inference that the only thing that changed in their life is they had some kind of contact with the sheriff's office, and then hours or days later, ICE is showing up at their doorstep. And as I said, the presentations are speaking about the carceral setting, but I think that we also need to be looking at the training, the policies, and when necessary, the discipline that goes toward addressing the situation of officers sharing personal information, including home addresses or location information, with ICE. And that is specifically addressed under the California Values Act. So I'm just noting it and setting it aside. My comments are going to be focused on the custodial setting, which is what we've been speaking about with the sheriff's office. So as Chief Deputy Tyson Davis said, we outlined 5 points that we want the sheriff's office to look at in reevaluating its policies implementing the Truth Act and SB 54. The first is that the Kern County Sheriff's Office cannot delay a person in order to facilitate their transfer, a person's release in order to facilitate their arrest by ICE. And the Sheriff's Office presentation says that the sheriff doesn't do that, and I will say that the policy is very clear in saying that they will not do that, but we have two issues. The first is the Sheriff's Office policy has various exceptions, including when someone has a prior deportation order, and the law is very clear that a prior deportation order is not a basis for holding that person in order for ICE to make an arrest. So a deportation order is a civil, is a civil order by an employee of the Department of Justice. It's not an arrest warrant from a federal judge. It's not a basis to hold somebody, and the law is clear that you should not hold somebody merely because they have a prior deportation order. There are many people in the United States with prior deportation orders. They can often move to have those reopened, and oftentimes there's some clerical error or some reason explaining why the person has deportation order, and they can end up remaining in the United States and becoming lawful permanent residents and citizens. So the law is clear. Deportation order is not a basis to hold somebody, and so the sheriff's office needs to eliminate that as a basis for holding someone upon their release from the jail.
Mr. Wells, can I interrupt you for just a second?
Yep.
Supervisor Perez has a
I
question
have
or
a
comment.
question. Thank you, Mr. Wells. Nice to see you again. Is this the exception that's noted in the presentation? If an exception applied, the jailer has discretion to honor or not a request by ICE. Is a prior deportation order within that framework?
Thanks for that question. No, I'll just, let me back up and say, the law is confusing. But what is very clear under the law is that no local law enforcement agency can hold someone beyond the point when they should be released. So let's say I am arrested on a criminal charge and the court sets bail. Someone from my family posts bail. I should be released, and let's say I'm in the sheriff's office custody, and ICE has requested that I be delivered into their custody upon my release from jail. If somebody from my family goes and posts bail, I should be released just as quickly as any other person would be released from the county jail, and my time of release shouldn't be delayed by virtue of the fact that ICE has requested notification from the sheriff's office. The exception, what you're adverting to is that there are certain exceptions for when the sheriff's office may notify ICE that a person is being released. But
Like
they
an
can never-
aggravated felony, I presume?
Yeah, right. So
That would be one of them?
Right, right. And
Okay.
that's, but all that is telling ICE, we're beginning the release process, and essentially ICE can show up and make the arrest at that time. Those are the exceptions to the law. There are no exceptions in the law that say you can actually hold a person and delay their release.
I see.
The difference is you can notify, but you can never hold somebody under the law longer than they otherwise would be held.
That's helpful, thank you.
So one is eliminating exceptions that would permit holding on to people. The other is, as we heard from people last night, and as our office has heard concerns about, despite the prohibition on delaying people's release, we have heard continuing reports of people, at least the perception of people is that they are being held longer than they otherwise would be. In other words, somebody posts bail, bail's posted at 7 p.m., let's say, and the person's not being let out until 1 a.m., and they're being delivered directly into ICE's custody. And so the inference that the person is drawing, and it seems like a reasonable one, is that the reason that their release was delayed was in order to give ICE time to show up and make the arrest. And so what the sheriff's office needs to do is be very careful that no one is being treated differently based on the fact that there is a request by ICE for notification. So, sheriff's deputies should not be dragging their heels in releasing somebody, should not be going out of our way to build in extra time in order for ICE to come and make an arrest. And our proposal, in order to address this and make sure and give comfort to the community that any delay is not as a result of an ICE request for an arrest, is that the sheriff's office limit release time to a certain number of hours. And I understand and appreciate that sometimes there are operational reasons or just sort of staffing reasons why a release may take a certain amount of time. But what we always want to be sure of is that a release is not being delayed solely because the sheriff's office is dragging its heels in order for ICE to come and make an arrest. So that's the key point.
Supervisor Perez, you done with that? Okay.
The second point I want to make is, as I said, the sheriff's office cannot hold somebody in order for ICE to come and make an arrest. But under SB 54, there are certain circumstances when the sheriff's office may facilitate a transfer of a person into ICE's custody. And that's when a person has particular criminal history, specific list of convictions under the law that enable the sheriff's office to facilitate a transfer of that person into ICE custody. And what the ACLU has done is gone through that list and compared it against the sheriff's office list and compared it against the state law. And we've identified a number of ways in which the sheriff's office list is overly broad in comparison to the state law. And so we'll be addressing with them the instances in which a person's criminal history, as reflected on their list, actually shouldn't qualify them for a transfer into ICE custody. But I also want to pause on this point and just say, whenever ICE is getting beyond the public areas of the jail and back into the jail and receiving custody of a person directly, essentially hand to hand with the sheriff's office, perhaps as a formalistic matter, the person's leaving the sheriff's custody and entering into ICE custody within a brief pause. But if it's happening inside the private areas of the jail, beyond where the public's allowed to be, that's considered a transfer under SB 54, and that's when this requirement kicks in. That for that to happen, the person has to have a criminal conviction that qualifies them for that. And what the sheriff's office is saying, there's no dispute about this, is that somewhere between 2/3 and 3/4 of the time when ICE requests that a person be released into their custody, sheriff's office is facilitating that transfer. And again, I go back to the point from before, which is that although the law permits that in certain circumstances, and as I mentioned, we have some quibbles about exactly where those lines are drawn, and we're going to address those with the sheriff's office, there is no doubt that the law in certain circumstances allows some transfer into ICE custody. The question is whether the sheriff's office should do that, because there's nothing requiring them to facilitate these transfers. And so I just, again, mention that as so many people have pointed out, we want to limit to the greatest extent possible the sheriff's office involvement in immigration enforcement. And actually, while I'm on this point, I want to mention one other thing. We have from the sheriff's office, as Ms. Tovar pointed out, sheriff's office has to make an annual report to the Attorney General's office about the number of transfers it facilitates into ICE custody, and its 2018 report lists 0 transfers into ICE custody. And that obviously stands in total contrast to the report we're hearing today, which is that 374 arrests by ICE were facilitated by the sheriff's office. And what the Attorney General's office has made clear, and I think this maybe explains the discrepancy between the 0 number and the 374 number, is each of those 374 arrests, to the extent they're happening back in the bowels of the jail where the public's not allowed in, those are considered transfers under SB 54. The Attorney General's been clear about that. And so those should be reported as transfers to the Attorney General's office, and then the sheriff's office also should be, for each of those transfers, specifying the basis for the transfer. The basis has to be one that matches a criterion that's in SB 54 in terms of the person's criminal history. So if somebody, if this is their first brush with the law and they actually don't have any criminal history, and the sheriff's office is facilitating arrest, well, that would be a clear case of an illegal transfer under SB 54. The person has to have a qualifying conviction that enables the sheriff to make that transfer. So that was my second and fifth point. Let me just mention briefly 2 other points. One, sheriff's office has to make clear that interviews by ICE are voluntary on the Truth Act notification form. And, as the presentation pointed out, most people are declining to be interviewed by ICE, but the law requires that a person who's been requested to be interviewed by ICE be informed that the interview is voluntary. And so we just asked that the sheriff's office add that to the notification form. And then lastly, I just want to mention the sheriff's office policy is very clear, although there are, I think, clear problems in implementation with this, but the sheriff's office policy is clear about not holding people, not delaying their release. And I've already mentioned why I think there are some problems with that, with implementation of that policy. But the sheriff's office also needs to be very clear about not sharing information about a person's immigration status, personal information, or any other information that would assist in immigration enforcement. And this goes to the concern that some of the community members raised last night about having contact with the sheriff's office, whether it's reporting a crime that they witnessed or that they were a victim of, and or any other contact with the sheriff's office, and then finding themselves in contact with ICE. The sheriff's office needs to be very careful and very clear in its policies. The sheriff's deputies, both inside the carceral setting and outside in the community, in the patrol setting, are not to be sharing personal information with ICE. So that is our presentation on SB 54 and the Truth Act. We're happy to answer any other questions you have.
Thank you. I have a question. It could be for you or it could be for staff. I'm curious how the Sheriff's Department is supposed to notify the AG's office. Does every county do it differently, or is there a system that everyone uses? How's it done?
I'll answer it as best as I know.
Okay.
Which is that the law provides for 2 forms of reporting to the Attorney General's office. One is reporting on any task forces that the Sheriff's Office is involved in that do any form of immigration enforcement. So if they have a joint task force with ICE and it is focused on, let's say, drug enforcement, the AG requires that any collateral immigration arrests that take place in association with that task force be reported on an annual basis. Separately, they require, the AG's office requires, and they have a form for this. I only have this form because the Sheriff's Office provided the form.
So there's a standardized form that's our form, or is it the state AG's form?
I'm looking at a form. It looks like the state's form. It's on the AG's letterhead, and it basically says transfer and then offense code. And the offense code is supposed to reflect that the person that you transferred has a prior conviction that makes that transfer legal. If they don't, then the transfer wasn't permissible. So it's a way for the AG's office to track how many transfers we're making into ICE custody and what's the basis for them.
If the Sheriff's Department doesn't weigh in to disagree with that, I'm going to accept that you're agreeing with that.
I think it's important to note that prior to this year, it was task force arrests, which were 0. That's why it's 0. It's now the transfers, and we are complying with that now.
I see. Bless you. Thank you, Mr. Wells. Does that conclude your comments? Thank you. Okay, so now this is the part of the public forum. We have an interpreter available for anyone desiring to address the board during the public comment portion of this meeting. Mr. Lopez is in the back, but we also have another interpreter up front. And if I could, just to facilitate things, you saw the way the folks earlier during public comments came down and they kind of lined up. That was helpful. So if I could ask that anyone who would like to speak, could we come down and sort of form a line over here to my left, your right? Yes, sir.
Castaneda again. This is now my 2 minutes. I want to point out to what
I'm sorry. Let me interrupt you. Let me back up and start over again. We typically have a 2-minute time period. We're going to follow that, but if you're requiring interpretation, then or interpreter, then we're going to double that.
The consent agenda. Under your definition of motions, I believe that this board is in violation of.
I'm sorry.
Of due process.
You just said consent agenda, and that threw me.
On the consent agenda, under your agenda here, you have a definition of motion. I believe that this board is in violation of the rules of parliament, also known as the rules of order. The way it reads right here, it says a motion, a proposal for action. After a motion is seconded, the chairman will ask if there is any opposition. If not, the motion is considered unanimously passed or the board is polled. I believe that's in violation of the rules of parliament. The rules of parliament says under motions.
Mr. Castaneda, we don't use Robert's Rules of Order.
Well, any official government assembly or has to be ruled under the rules of parliament, which is the same thing as
hang on one second.
Rules of order.
Ms. Rezan, can you comment?
Chairman Couch, your rules have been reviewed and have been determined to be legally sufficient.
Thank you.
It is not. So I just want to point it out. So you guys need to address it because.
Understood.
Okay. Well, I need to tell you what the point is, and then you can address it later. Under the rules of parliament or rules of order, a motion, if it's seconded, then it must be entertained. So if it is entertained, then there will be a call for debate and discussion, pro and against, and then there will be rebuttals, pro and against. Again, when all that is done, then you call for the vote, and then you vote. All the members who have voting powers, they will vote, and then if it passes, then it's passed. But according to this definition, it says that if it's seconded and there's no opposition or whatever, then it's automatically, unanimously passed. That is wrong.
Thank you. Who'll be next? Good morning.
My name is Andrea Guevara. Good morning, Board of Supervisors. Oh, and Sheriff Youngblood, I'm so surprised to see you here as you haven't bothered showing up to our previous truth forums. Thank you for coming today. After listening to the sheriff's presentations, it's so easy to assume that the sheriff is in no way collaborating with ICE and that they are not attached or entangled with ICE. But I'd like to point your attention to a few facts about our sheriff. So ICE has publicly admitted having a strong partnership to Youngblood and modified its reporting methods to highlight Youngblood's interest in immigration detention. Also, Youngblood proposed making Kern County an anti-sanctuary county in 2017. He also refused to sign U visas for victims of trafficking and violence. Now here's a quote. We cooperate probably as much as anybody in the state of California with ICE. Now, as much as we might disagree with, if any of you disagree with our immigration policies or immigration issues, I'd like to direct your attention to our back seal, beautiful back seal that we have of Kern County, and it says, "In God we trust." Now, I know a lot of you up there are faith people, and as faith people, we recognize that Jesus Christ, our Savior, was actually a refugee. And imagine if Jesus Christ would have shown up to our borders, would have shown up to even just Kern County. We would probably lock him up in our backyard Mesa Verde. And we would just look the other side and say, this is not the Board of Supervisors jurisdiction. This is not ICE collaborating with sheriffs. We would just look the other side. Now at the bottom it says, e pluribus unum. That means out of all we are one. Out of all the immigrants that came to America, we are Americans. America is a nation of immigrants. We are all one together, and Kern County is very diverse. We definitely represent a lot of different types of ethnicities and races of people, and that makes us beautiful. That makes our beautiful seal of agriculture, which is hardly worked, but it's very, very heavily worked by immigrants. And it makes our community great. We had a presentation about agriculture earlier, stating how much profits we have from agriculture. And immigrants are out there from dawn to dusk working it. We cannot antagonize our community like this. We can't have.
You've gone well over the 2 minutes. Could I ask you to bring your statement to a close so we can make sure we get everyone to speak today?
So to close off my statements, I'd just like to say that we cannot antagonize the people who make our community great, our agriculture great, and we have to hold our sheriff accountable for not being collaborative with our statements. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be next. Ms. Barrow.
Thank you again, Supervisor Couch and members of the board, and Sheriff Youngblood. I too am very happy that you're here today. Sheriff, you usually don't attend, so I'm very happy to see that you're here. My concern is that at every point and at every junction, and that when an individual is provided with a form of any kind, I know that the Truth Act requires that they be provided in the appropriate language. I just want to make sure that every form, including those that are provided by ICE when they get involved, also comply with that law. And that every piece of paper be provided in a language that that individual understands. Also, while it is in the city, I want to express my really acute concern for Mesa Verde and what goes on there. It is within the county. I'm aware that many states, including Oregon and Washington, have filed lawsuits against the corporation that owns and operates that facility. So I want to make sure that we, as a community, take every precaution to make sure that every inmate, every individual that is processed at any facility within Kern County is treated with fairness, dignity, and respect, and they are protected under the law. And I'm asking you to cooperate with the city of Bakersfield to make sure that that happens, particularly at Mesa Verde. They have a terrible track record. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Who will be next? Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Nancy Renfro. I attended the session last evening, and Sheriff, I'm very pleased to see you here this morning. I have a couple of more questions. And the first is, in the framework of a very difficult financial crisis for the county, how much personnel time is required for cooperation with ICE? And the second, this actually came up last night, and it had to do with a trip to El Paso that you, Sheriff Youngblood, took. And I'm not sure I understand what business the county had with that visit to El Paso. So with all respect, I would appreciate if there could be responses to those two questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, good morning. Thank you
Morning.
for having me. Thank you for everyone else who's here today as well. So my name is Rebecca Castro, and I'm a Youth Development Associate at the Dolores Huerta Foundation, and I organize with elementary, middle school, and high school students here in Arvin, Lamont, and Bakersfield. And I'm speaking here today, I was also here last night, for our youth and their families. And I ask you to use your power to stand up for human rights for all people who are here, regardless of their social, political, or economic background. Use your privilege of being a white person and set an example for other white people to do the same. We need to work together, and by we, I mean all of us here, everyone here in this room today. And Sheriff, all the Sheriff's Department, I ask you to stop cooperating with ICE and start cooperating with what the people here are asking. If you continue to ignore our questions and our statements, I promise you that there will be no peace, and we will not be silent. And I want to end a quote with Native American John Trudell. We must never be afraid. Fear must not be a part of our life. And the only thing that we should worry about is that we live our lives without honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Who'll be next? Step to the microphone and proceed. Good morning.
Hello, my name is Kathleen Michelet. I was here last night, unlike the sheriff, because I was interested in what the ACLU had to say. And what concerns me is the overall poor attitude about AB 54 and the lack of interest in California being a sanctuary state. Sheriff Youngblood has commented many, many times about his negative attitude about this and his interest in cooperating with ICE. And our board has financed that repeatedly. It's financed the trip to see the president. And the president is connected with a group called FAIR. And FAIR is a racial group that supports it's a racial group against immigrants and keeping them, it's a white-based group against immigrants and keeping this racial issue alive. And my greatest concern is that there's a consistent lying going on as far as reporting documentation. There's a consistent lying going on in your connection with ICE. And it's not going to stop. You just you don't take it seriously. You just play games. And ACL puts together these reports, and we just blow them off. And you as a group up here, you don't take it seriously either. And so I'm asking the community to come forward and support the ACLU, because the ACLU has a right to take action, and I hope they take that action soon, because we have a serious problem, and it needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here today. Who'll be next? Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Edith Mata. I come from a mixed status family, which means I am a citizen of the United States while the rest of my family is undocumented. The uncertainty and fear of knowing that we can be separated is what fuels my desires and passion to advocate for my community. I am currently a busy student and the vice president of 2 student organizations, Youth Empowering Success and Latinos Unidos por Educación. It's heartbreaking that many of my classmates share the same goals and dreams as myself. However, they must live day by day in fear of having their education, family dreams, and future jeopardized because of their status in the United States. This administration has made it a crime to be foreign. The federal government has failed to create a workable immigration process, and we need the immigrant community to trust local law enforcement, not live in the fear that they will work with ICE. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming today. Yes, sir. State your name and proceed.
Good
if
morning.
If you'd like.
I'd like to just speak as a concerned member of the community, and good morning to you all. I'd like to start by acknowledging the fact that we are walking in indigenous land. This is Yokut land, and let us be mindful as we walk upon it humbly. And as for those of us who have indigenous blood in our bodies, to not let anyone with title or a badge or uniform make us feel as foreigners in our native land. I am glad that Sheriff Youngblood is here as well today. I wish he was here yesterday evening because there was more members of the community voicing their concerns that are not voicing their opinions as well, that they do not share the same opinions as you do and disagree and are appalled by the anti-immigrant policies and practices and beliefs that you have. After your visit to Calexico, you mentioned the concern that you have about the heinous crimes committed by undocumented people in our county. And I'd just like to point out, what about the heinous crimes committed by the Kern County Sheriff's Office year after year with no accountability, no sort of punishment, and no form of justice delivered? And you fail to acknowledge, as mentioned by the presentation by Amber Tovar, about the contributions that undocumented folks contribute to this country. As far as the presentations that we received today and the presentations given by the Kern County Sheriff's Office, I'd like to mention that the demographic information that they gave does not prove that there are no violations of these acts. We need empirical proof that those 374 people had qualifying crimes for the collaboration with ICE. So my ask is for both members of the board to put pressure as you control the purse and have political influence and represent us as our representatives. I would like you to put pressure on the Kern County Sheriff's Office to next time we have this forum to actually provide a breakdown of those individuals that were transferred over to ICE to make sure that they were, in fact, had qualifying crimes. So I would hope that they would be able to provide that information for 2018 and 2019. More importantly, as mentioned by Jordan, we would like to...
Sir?
Yeah, just really quick, my close here.
Please.
That we would like to not only ask for them to be transparent in detail to ensure that these violations are not occurring, but completely disentangle their collaboration with ICE.
Thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Who'll be next? Yes, sir.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning, Sheriff. My name is Daniel Romero. I'm a son of a migrant farm worker, and I'm a Vietnam veteran, having proudly served with the United States Marine Corps.
Thank you for your
I'm
service.
here to, my pleasure. I'm here to protest against the current practices that the Kern County Sheriff's Department is taking with ICE on immigration. It is improper. Due process is improper. It is cruel, the separation of families, and it is evil. We are not, excuse me for saying this, but we are not Nazis. Big picture, we need to stop engaging in politics of arrogance and hate. Instead, we need to focus on the politics of hope and of vision. All migrants that come here, they come because they do believe in the American dream. And they do believe in having the right to pursue happiness. And that means a safe food supply, good dwellings, clean water, and security out in the streets. I thank you for your time
Thank you.
and attention.
Thank you. Morning.
Good morning. My name is Lori Pasante, and I'm a resident of District 4. I'm here today speaking as a community member, and I appreciate everyone in this room being here at the table to have this conversation. And indeed, the points that I made last night, I wish to reiterate now that Sheriff Youngblood is also with us. And I believe also that Chief Deputy Tyson heard my comments last night as well. I am the daughter of 2 Los Angeles sheriffs. And like I told you gentlemen last night, I've been around those brown shirts my whole life. I think I probably cut some teeth on a Sam Brown, okay? But now I teach criminal justice at Bakersfield College, and many of my students go on to serve in the Sheriff's Department and Bakersfield Police Department. they all universally tell me that their reason, their motivation for getting into things is because they see that things are not right and they want to help make them better. But obviously, there's a huge disconnect between that intention and what actually happens when they get trained. And so I brought to the board's attention last night, and I bring it to yours now, that it's my direct knowledge that your training does include the post-certification related to racial profiling and implicit bias. However, it's not taken seriously, and the message is very clear to your academy graduates that it's not valued. So my ask for this board and for you, sir, is to make it real. The research shows very clearly that every 4 to 6 weeks is what is required for ongoing implicit bias training for it to make anything stick, and clearly we need it. The other thing I want to ask is if, in the absence of the leadership on this issue, that individual deputies and uniformed officers, I would like very much for you to take it upon yourselves as individuals, because who ultimately is going to be held responsible? It's going to be you. And it's not just our uniformed officers, but anybody here tonight, or this morning rather, who occupies a position of decision-making authority in this county. You need to go on Harvard's Project Implicit website. You need to take those implicit bias tests yourself. It's like checking your cholesterol. It's not a big deal. You just got to lower on the shrimp, right? Eat more avocado, right? It's not a big deal. We can have these conversations. It starts with today. It starts with these truth forums. And I really hope that you're open to having more of them in the future. Pick up the book Blind Spot as well. I highly recommend it.
Thank you.
Our history definitely requires us to be honest with ourselves about who we really are and what's really happening.
Thank you, Ms. Basante.
Thank you, sir.
You bet. Any others? If you'd like to speak, I don't see any other requests to speak, so oh, sorry, didn't see you there. If there are others, could we get you to come down to the front so we can get you to the microphone quickly? Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Juan Hernandez, and I reside in DeLeon, California. Nice. Good morning. Yesterday, I wasn't able to make it to the evening meeting as I was in Sacramento lobbying for the AB 392 bill. And I learned many things yesterday. But something I learned yesterday that I'd like to apply to today's meeting is that institutions like these, like the Board of Supervisors, institutions like the Sheriff's Department, one thing that must be acknowledged is that today we stand in front of an institution that is ideologically empty. Today, you have heard narratives after narrative after narrative of the trauma, the violence of people who are affected by the decisions that happen today by every single one of you. And the sheriff sits here today with the gall, someone who is like me from DeLeon, California, to see media break out that he has the gall to attend meetings that going to the direct farm workers and of work. The criminalization that this department is guilty of. I will not thank you today for showing up today, because this is the bare minimum that you can do after the action that you have consistently shown of injustice. With all that said, I will recognize today that I come from a mixed status family. I am a citizen, and with that comes privileges. But what I will not do is not face and condemn the actions of institutions like these. Abolish ICE. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Who'll be next? Good morning.
Good morning, Octavio Barajas. I just want to add to my statement that I made yesterday. And so this is a Truth Act, California Values Act, which are meant to protect Kern residents. I think there's a irony in the word truth that this forum is intended to hold. There's a lot of public commentary that was expressed last night that challenges that validity, right? What's been reported officially. There's incongruencies with a lot of the anecdotal, a lot of qualitative information that's been provided to the board last night and today that tells a different kind of story, which is going to be a great challenge. How does this board reconcile those differences? How do you take into account the voice of the community that is saying that they need more protection? Are we going to just allow the state to determine what laws are going to be in place in California? Or are we going to leave it for big government, the federal government, to decide. Ultimately, it's good, honest people of Kern County that are paying for the failures of a broken immigration system. And you've been hearing a lot of their voices. So the ultimate challenge is for this board to take a position and not just allow the state to determine what policy is going to be. Take a position that's going to further protect our residents of Kern County. We heard many of the stories yesterday, even students at Bakersfield College that have been directly impacted. And only to add to my story, my statement that I mentioned yesterday of a student who had her father volunteer his deportation. One thing to add in addition to that story is the fact that there was a confiscation, their life savings were confiscated during that arrest, and that confiscation of their life savings was never returned. In addition, there were sheriff's officers who returned to their home asking them to sign a paperwork so they would never allowed to speak on that issue. And in return, they would be provided a small portion of their life savings. So these are the kinds of things that are happening. These are the kind of anecdotal kind of information that you're getting. And these are kinds of practices that have been publicized before already by a journal outside of the United States in London. So these are the kinds of things that we have to take into account. Board, take a stance.
Could I ask you to provide your, if you'd like, if you're willing, to provide your contact information to Ms. Lawson right over there? I'd like to follow up with you.
Problem. Sure.
Thank you. Are there,
Good morning. My name is Brian Osorio, and
morning, Councilman. How are you?
I preside in District 4, council member for the city of Delano. And I have two simple points. The first one is I do thank you for having multiple forums, especially early in the year. It shows not only your willingness to listen, but also to act accordingly. My second point is summarized by a quote by the famous Angela Davis. In a racist society, it is not only okay to be non-racist, we have to be anti-racist. And in the context of today, I see that, we are doing the bare minimum. What I hear is, we are not working with ICE. But what I want to be hearing is that we will be working against ICE. And when I go out in the community and I hear that the basic mechanisms of the Truth Act, the Trust Act, and the California Values Act isn't being followed, it shows our community members that the basic promise of living in sanctuary isn't being followed. And so I'll finish with this, and it'll be controversial. I don't fully support SB 54, and not for the same reason some of you don't. It is because it doesn't go far enough. And when it doesn't go far enough, we have community members who live in fear and whose families are being separated every day. And so lastly, because of SB 54, it gives the Sheriff's Department the ability to say, we cooperate with ICE within the access of law. And so what I want to say, as I did at the last forum, is that legality does not translate to morality. And that's what I'll finish with. Legality does not translate with morality. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Who'll be next?
Good morning. My name is Yasmin, and I also want to agree with the previous speaker and the fact that I don't agree that the SB 54 goes far enough, because we have seen Sheriff Youngblood attend events where Trump has been present in. We have seen him attend other events out in the community alleging to support our community, but in fact, we all know that he doesn't. I also want to point out to you, David Couch, that you haven't addressed the fact that Sheriff Youngblood has not signed U-Visa certifications, which are supposed to help undocumented victims of crime. This is my third time speaking to you in a public setting like this, and there still hasn't been anything done about it. I also want to point out that the sheriff might allege that he or his department may only cooperate with ICE in terms of there being some sort of severe criminal reason or some sort of severe criminal history with someone. And even though that is still not correct, he still doesn't help victims who have been victimized by a non-valid and an incorrect criminal justice system that is broken, which he follows and which he allows immigration to just come on in and give them access to a bunch of databases and information. So I want to point that out to you, that I still haven't seen anything been done about that. And we know that the sheriff has been attending events where Trump has been present and where Trump supporters have also been present. Thank you.
If you're willing, would you provide your contact information to Ms. Lawson so I could contact you?
I've done this one more time, but I'm going to go ahead and just do it again.
Thank you. Who'll be next?
Okay, now for my 2 minutes. Al Castaneda again.
Mr. Castaneda,
Yes, thank you.
your 2 minutes, you took it already, so.
No, that was a comment on the process.
No, that was the time where we were having our forum. Now, I'm going to allow you to speak, but you already had 2 minutes.
Well,
I'm just pointing that out I'd like the record to reflect that Mr. Castaneda is being allowed to speak again.
Okay,
But he already
that's
did
fine.
speak.
That's fine, thank you. I do want to say, I want to say straight out that Sheriff Youngblood is a racist. His father was a
Okay.
racist. Please, this is my 2 minutes.
I understand it's your 2 minutes, but can you speak directly to, the issue at hand? And just calling people names doesn't really get us anywhere.
Well, it follows in the way of the people behave and things that they endorse. If the sheriff is connected to the organization FAIR, in any way, the organization FAIR was founded by a super racist called John Tanton. He was the founder of several racist organizations, and all of them were exposed as openly racist. So finally, he kind of fine-tuned his MO and created the FAIR organization, which appears to be more mainstream and more like an official legal entity, which is not. It's just him fine-tuning his MO. Some of the previous organizations he made, they're connected to the KKK and people of that sort. Also, the FAIR acronym, it also stands, it's a code word for fair, as in fair skin, meaning white people. So these are the people that they're on the line of white supremacy. That's what FAIR is all about. Everything that you talk about is nothing but lies and invented garbage, like 20 million illegal immigrants. They're the ones who invented it out of thin air. And going back to Sheriff Youngblood, his father was arresting people for doing nothing but organizing for labor. In a total violation of constitutional rights and abuse of power and authority.
I'm going to ask you to bring your comment to a close for your second portion.
That's all I need to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any others? Yes, ma'am. Any others? Can we get you to come to the front so we can get you up to the microphone quickly? Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Pamela Martinez. I am a community organizer, and I just wanted to point to you that on a daily basis, I talk to people in the community. I talk to people who are fearful to do basic things that we don't even think about doing, such as going to the grocery store. Every year, we know that there is ICE raids in our community. We know that people are stopped on their way to work. Every single year, every single day, people have this fear that they're not going to come back to see their family, to see their spouses, to see their children, and that is something that isn't fair. I want to ask each and every one of the Board of Supervisors, when was the last time that you went to your district and did door-to-door to ask your constituents of what their concerns are? Because I'm sure that each one of you did door-to-door when you were going to be elected, but when was the last time that you did it since you've been elected? My other point that I want to mention is that, which has already been mentioned, in 2017, there was one report of an ICE arrest resulting from probation or parole, yet the form in December 2018, the probation department insisted that the department did not cooperate with ICE. I want to know what assures us that the Sheriff's Department isn't holding back any information. Who is going to be held accountable for this error that was made or this information that was not provided? And I want to know what the Board of Supervisors is going to do. This is the second time that we have this Trust Act forum. What is this Board of Supervisors going to do to hold the Sheriff's Department accountable? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. Any others? This is round two.
I know it's round two. I will make it short. I've been sitting here listening, and I'm very sorry I couldn't be here last night. Several of you know that for many years I operated a Spanish language radio station here in Kern County, and I continue to work closely with the Latino community. And I want to say to the sheriff and to you supervisors that the community overall is afraid of the Sheriff's Department. Not so much the BPD, that's gotten better, but it is embarrassing to watch the news and to see our sheriff kowtowing with bigots and racists proudly. It doesn't help.
Ms. Barrow.
Okay? And I'm asking you to ask the sheriff's department to do a better job of relating to the Latino community and to all the community of color in Kern County.
Thank you for your statement.
Thank you.
I think we're probably close to the end. Mayor? Is that you? It is.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and fellow Board of Supervisors staff. First, I want to thank you for hosting this forum again and all the work that staff did, the Sheriff's Department and the community organizations that came together. I want to echo the recommendation of the ACLU and point out that SB 54 and the Truth Act, the Trust Act, and the rest of the statutes just provide a floor. It's what the bare minimum that the law requires, and I ask that you as a board institute policies and direct the Sheriff's Department to promote policies that will focus on public safety. Let's go after the people that are causing crimes in our community. Let's make our community safer, but let's do so in a way that does not put fear into certain members of our community. Because whenever my constituents, whenever I talk to them about public safety, whenever something happens in my community, the number one thing that our public safety officers say is that people are scared to come forward for several reasons, but one of them is because of fear of retaliation because of their immigrant status. So we got to make sure that what we do is move forward in a way, implement statutes and regulations that does so that the public feels safe to come forward and we can improve public safety. And lastly, I know a lot has been mentioned about the Sheriff's Department and maybe even some political stances of the members of the Board of Supervisors. As duly elected members here in the county, you're allowed to take your political positions, whether that's embracing the politics of the president, the divisiveness, and the anti-immigrant sentiment. That is totally within your power. But as a community or as an elected leader of a community that is largely Hispanic and that is full of immigrants and recognizes the power that immigrants provide to this community economically, socially, in all kinds of ways, I disagree with that. I don't think that those type of politics are good for the community, are good for public safety. If you really want to improve public safety and immigration, let's adopt immigration reform with the pathway towards citizenship. Let's allow people that are living in the shadows here in the county contribute to the economy and improve public safety. Thank you.
Thank you for coming today. Mr. Fox.
Hello, Mr. Chairman, members of
Morning.
the board, and Dennis Fox. And I'm not really that interested in what's going on in Venezuela and stuff. I'm more concentrated on Bakersfield and Kern County. And every year I come up and get on the sheriff's case about the insurance rates and the cost of our low ratio of sheriffs to the general public. And I see that as detrimental. And I would not, all the other counties in the state have rejected having state prisoners. We took them, and it's with an added increase, and we're going into the hole on that one. So that is what however, it seems like we're having the problem taken care of. If we have a low ratio of sheriffs to the general public, then we can reduce the general public through ICE, then the ratio gets better, he said sarcastically. But the other thing I was wondering, being somewhat of a conservative bent, I remember what Marty Niemöller, call him Marty, Martin Niemöller had to comment on this stuff. And updating it would be, first they came for, he said, first they came for the Jews, and I'm not Jewish. Well, I would say first they come for the Mexicans. I'm not Mexican, I don't care. Los Angeles in the 30s had people at the border restricting entry to our state. Maybe we update that. First they come from the Mexicans, then they came for the Okies. Maybe we ship them back. And that's the thing that Martin Niemöller noted, and I do not like to see that returned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Who'll be next? Do you need an interpreter?
I'm going to interpret for her.
We have one available as well. Okay,
Oh, okay.
thank you.
Como lo que tú quieras. So then one would be available for her?
Yes,
Okay.
she can do it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Laura Salgado, promotora en community. Escuchar todo lo que están hablando aquí.
Listening to everything that is being said here,
Quiero compartirles que estoy en la comunidad,
I want to share with you that I am a part of that community.
día con día,
Day after day,
mirando a los inmigrantes
looking at immigrants
que traen a la mesa
that bring
la
to the
fruta
table
y
the
los
fruit,
vegetales
the vegetables
en sus hogares.
to their homes.
Ellos en realidad tienen miedo.
They in reality are in fear.
Recordando, mi padre fue un bracero.
Remembering my father was a labor worker, I believe is what she said.
Lamentablemente murió y no pudo beneficiarse de lo que se han beneficiado los braceros.
Unfortunately, he was not able to benefit from the work that he contributed to that others have indeed benefited from.
Día tras día,
Day
en mi
after day,
infancia y mi juventud,
during her infancy and early years of life,
cruzaba este país porque solamente me dividía una reja.
he would cross over into this country because only a fence would be the division.
Día a día,
Day after
miraba
day,
cruzar
he would
a
see-
personas que venían del interior del país, de
She would see
México,
people come from the interior of Mexico,
de Guatemala,
Guatemala,
de El Salvador,
from El Salvador,
y cruzaban un canal.
and they would cross a canal.
El que podía cruzarlo gritaba y decía, voy a realizar mi sueño.
Those who were able to cross over the canal used to yell, I am finally able to realize my dream.
Muchos de ellos perdieron su vida en ese canal.
Much of them lost their lives in the canal.
Día tras día,
Day
cuando
after day,
cruzaba este país,
when I would
miraba
cross into this
cómo
country,
brincaban ese cerco
I would see how many of them would jump a fence
para venir y proveer a su familia
to come and
una
provide
vida
for their
mejor.
family a better life.
Nunca soñé
I never dreamt
personalmente
personally
venir a este país
coming
y
into this
poder
country
realizar una vida mejor.
and being able to realize a better life.
Las circunstancias
The
me trajeron a
circumstances
este país.
have brought me to this country.
Y desde que llegué a este país,
And since I
he
got to this
trabajado
country, I have worked
Sorry.
en trabajos que nunca pensé.
The problem is that I never thought.
Porque yo en mi país era
Because
una
I, in my country,
profesionista.
I was a professional
Y vine aquí
And I
a
came
limpiar
here
los excusados donde ustedes van.
to wash your toilets.
Vine a trabajar a los
I
files.
came to work in the
Can I ask you to
fields.
pause for a second? I need,
Solamente quiero decirle con su
Señora, un
permiso.
momento, por favor.
I'm really asking, I think, the interpreter, can I ask you to speak in a phrase or two and pause, and then you to interpret for her? 'Cause
I'd appreciate that.
I'm not understanding it.
Sure.
Okay.
Lo que acaba de pedir el señor es que usted hable un momento y luego me dé a mí la oportunidad de
Para que
interpretar.
traduzca. Perdón.
Gracias.
Not your fault. Not your fault. Thank you.
No es su culpa.
Ok. Es para uno como emigrante venir a este país y cambiar tu situación para lograr algo mejor.
For someone like myself to come into this country, the goal is to change our status and to have a better life. Por favor, hágame el favor de hacer
Menos pausa.
para poder traducir mejor.
Solo quiero decirle al alguacil, a la policía, a ustedes,
I just want to tell you, the sheriff, and everybody else here,
cada uno de ustedes tiene que hacer su trabajo,
each one of you must do your job.
pero también tienen familia.
But you also have family.
Y a lo mejor alguno de ustedes llegó como emigrante.
And perhaps one of you arrived as an immigrant.
La comunidad allá afuera
The
tiene
community
miedo.
outside, the community outside is in fear.
no quieren salir
They don't want to come out
porque ven a una persona con esa vestimenta
because they see someone in those garments
y sienten que los van a cuestionar.
and feel that they're going to get questioned.
Lo único que pedimos es compasión y justicia para ellos,
The only thing that we ask for is compassion and justice for them.
porque como no todos los dedos de la mano son igual.
Because on our hand, or like our hand, not every finger is the same.
No todas las personas somos delincuentes.
Not all people are criminals.
Understood. Can I ask, are you finished?
Yes, gracias.
Gracias. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Any others?
Well, it's going to take me a minute to come back. I apologize after that great speech, right? So I'm a community member of District 2. I apologize for my voice. So I want to go ahead and start off with the definition of imagination. So it says to form a mental image or something not actually present to the sense. So as you four were here, oh, she's already gone. So as you four were here present, as well as others, and the two other sheriffs that were here, a lot of people spoke about imagining. Let me turn my phone back on, I apologize.
Okay.
But the truth is that you cannot imagine what the people go through, what they feel, the reaction they have to it, the effect it has on them mentally. You cannot go through that. And I was sharing with one of my colleagues the other day, I had said that I wanted to experience certain things that those people go through to know what they feel and what they believe and how it affects them mentally. So that's why I decided to go with this. So as the person before me was saying, you have families. You can't imagine your parents being gone when you come home. You can't imagine what effect it's going to have on your grandchildren for them to come home from school and their parents not be home. You don't know how they fear. And somebody spoke about yesterday is the kids are scared and they have fear that when they go home from school, their parents are not going to be home. You don't know how that feels. Can't believe, you can't imagine that. You just can't imagine that. You can't imagine the effects it has on them emotionally. You don't know what they go through. And a lot of people come up here and say, like, imagine, but you can't imagine it. You can't pick out a picture and paint it like somebody spoke about, look at the back of the seal. Like it has, it's so beautiful. It has the fruit, it has everything. Yeah, we can imagine that. And they came to it. But your story, you can't imagine it coming home and your kids not being there because of their status, or your kids and their grandchildren coming home from school. You can't imagine that. Are you trying to imagine it right now, or are you taking notes?
Would you like?
As a white person, you could never imagine that. So I'm gonna leave it with that.
Would you like to provide your name for the record or not?
I'm a community member from District 2.
Good enough. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure. I don't see anyone else coming to the microphone. So we're going to close the public forum, and that's the conclusion of that item. We don't need a motion of any kind to move on from that item. Thank you for coming today and expressing yourselves. There were some questions that were asked. You may get some answers to those, possibly at a later date, but we're going to move on now. And that concludes our business for the morning. We just need a motion to adjourn to close. I'm sorry, do we have some? Oh, that's right. We have another item that needs to be added to our closed session agenda. This item came up after the agenda was already printed, so what we're going to need is for me to read this into the record. We need a motion to consider closed session item number 43. And the motion needs to be to make a finding that the need to take action on a non-agenda matter occurred after the agenda was posted on May 9th, 2019. County officials learned about facts and circumstances requiring this board's immediate attention in deciding whether to initiate litigation. And do I need to read item 43 into the record, or it's the entire item? Okay.
So moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. We also now need a motion to adjourn to closed session. I think Supervisor Maggard did that already. Without objection, we're adjourned. Thank you. Thank you very much for being here today.